Welcome to the Natural Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Christine Backus, and today is Thursday, December 4th, and I'm very excited to have Tammy Roth with me today. Hey, Tammy.
Hi.
We're going to talk more about all of Tammy's background. She's a psychotherapist, and I met her through something called quantum astrology, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But first, I thought, both for our benefit, me and Tammy, but all of us, as all of you as listeners as well, that we would just do a short meditation, just kind of to get grounded and centered. And it's also, we're just hours away from the Gemini full moon, and that energy is a little crazy. Full moons are anyway, but at least Gemini feels that way a little bit more to me, maybe because I don't have that much of it in my chart. So if you're where you can close your eyes, feel free to do that. No requirement. But in any case, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just bring your attention into your felt experience, your sensations. And we're going to be talking about this process too during the course of the podcast. And just don't imagine at this point, just experience whatever you're feeling in the body, whatever the physical sensations are. Notice what you're sitting on. Notice the feet and what the feet are on. If you're standing, obviously it's maybe a little easier to feel that connection with the floor. And just notice that that's your connection with the earth. Without imagining it, you can actually just feel it. And then take a few really conscious breaths. Notice that you're already breathing, but just bring your awareness and your attention to the breath and let the awareness kind of follow the breath in and out. And again, kind of noticing the physical sensations as well of the breath and the maybe the slight changes to the body as the breath comes in versus the breath going out. Just for a moment, let your attention be in there, in here, inside, in your actual felt experience. Because we may go off into some pretty wild places today. You can always just keep some of your attention in the body and in the felt experience. And with that, just take your time and come back to our shared space. And I'll say again, thank you, Tammy, for joining me. And
You're welcome.
I'll say a few words about kind of how we met and introduce you, and then you can kind of fill in what I left out, what I forgot or didn't know. But I know that you're a holistic psychotherapist, and you actually have some pretty traditional training in psychotherapy. And that what you, well, let me back up a little bit. I met Tammy through Emily Trinkaus, who many people will remember through the podcast as well, um, through a course on quantum astrology. And it was something really new and different for me. And it was really a lot of fun. And so that's how I got to know Tammy a little bit. And my description of it is kind of astrology meets family constellation work. And I think you probably have more to say about that. But it was yeah, I think it was eye-opening from my perspective just to notice how we have that direct access to the planets and to the chart and to the cosmos, which we talk about on the podcast, but that was a different and more, maybe a deeper experience of it for me. And you're training family constellations work, quantum astrology, and then I also noticed galactic astrology. And I think it'd be fun to kind of talk about what all of those are and how they inform each other. But with that as a very brief kind of intro, maybe you could just fill in what I've left out, Tammy.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm a fangirl. I love listening to your podcast. So I'm like, what? I get to do this? So I'm very excited about this conversation. Um, yeah, I spent 15 years in corporate and then left corporate, like many of us have, and became a therapist. But from the start, I was traditionally trained, licensed professional counselor. And from the start, I knew there was more than just the story. And so I started over 25 years ago incorporating energy work and like me studying everything I could about energy work because I knew it didn't matter what a person was saying, I could read what their energy was saying. And, you know, just as a highly sensitive person, I think I've always done that. And there were, you know, trainings coming around at that time that were helping me understand my own attunement to energy. And so I always worked with energy in sessions. And then from there, I started working with horses, equine therapy. And that really helped me, like, oh, yeah, the horses don't care anything about the words, they are all about the energy. So that was kind of, it really took me deeper into the process. And then I discovered family constellation work, which is that everything is energy. We are systemic beings in all these different systems, the family system being the most, you know, prevalent in our energy field, and how energy never dies. And so when these traumas happen in our families and we don't acknowledge them or resolve them in some way, it just keeps getting passed generation after generation. And ultimately, that's what I was seeing with everybody coming in is, you know, it was patterns or addictions or mental health crises that really wasn't theirs. It's just, you know, ancestral being passed on. So that really shifted everything about how I worked, and that is just pure energy. And so anyway, with all that going on, I always knew that astrology was an amazing resource, and I kept trying to learn it because I wanted to bring it into sessions, but it just would just go straight through me. It was like I couldn't hold on to it. And and it was frustrating because I really wanted to learn it. And eventually, I had partnered with somebody leading a retreat, and I was doing family constellations, and she was doing astrology. And without me knowing anything about a north and south node, I brought them into the field, and of course, what perfect placements to bring into a family constellation. But after that retreat, I had like this spontaneous download of astrology. Not that, and I'm still not, you know, not no expert in astrology, but I know how to look at a chart and find my way around. And it led to me taking people into the field with their own chart. And it's been, I guess, 5 years now, and it's just been mind blowing.
Yeah, that's wow. I mean, if our class is any indicator, the class that we just finished, it is mind blowing because I think, well, especially in the astrology realm, everything is so intellectualized, right? Most people learn a very intellectualized astrology, and not everybody learns well that way, as you know. And I see, I think Emily and I have talked about this too. We can kind of see what's happened to astrology when people just take it into that very intellectual realm.
Yeah.
What was the most, can you think about like a specific, I want to say mind-blowing um, insight that you had from when you first started to kind of get astrology this way?
It was shocking to me how similar, I mean, not just similar, almost identical to family constellations. These planets show up as personalities, and they have intention, that there's a consciousness, and they act like ancestors. And so I'm like, well, we come from the stars. We get, you know, are they not ancestors? So it just really locked it in deeper for me that, like, wow, this is not just, you know, an esoteric idea. This is real.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I do think different people play different roles or different planets in our lives at different time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when Saturn or Jupiter gets activated, sometimes we meet a teacher,
Right.
for
Yeah.
instance. Yeah. What so I wonder, I have like 5 or 6 different questions in my head, but one of them is one that I asked at the beginning of our course together too, is how do you define quantum? In fact, maybe define quantum and then also the galactic and like what does that mean? What does it mean to you? Because it's one of those very popular words right now, the quantum especially.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I've always said I was a holistic therapist, it's like, well, everybody uses that term too.
Yeah.
Um, and really, quantum kind of feels the same as holistic. I think of it as Barbara Hand Clow, her book, The Alchemy of Nine Dimensions, really helped put it in perspective for me that, like, the third dimension, 3D, we have the paper chart, we use our left brain. 4D is where all these archetypal energies, collective programming, like our beliefs about Saturn and Pluto versus Venus, that kind of thing, lives in the fourth dimensional realm. And then 5D, which is what I call the quantum, is it's it's just everything beyond. It's beyond the mental realm. It's the energetic. It To me, it really feels like it originates in the heart, and that, I mean, really, I think the actual term for quantum is, it's like a holographic. It's like the whole, is in the fractal's in the whole. And that's what I feel when I get into what I call the quantum field. Because in family constellation work, 10 years ago, it was called the knowing field, and there wasn't that much talk about quantum. And I love that. The knowing field is it the Akashic records? Is it, yeah, I don't really know, but I think the knowing field captures it best. It's like where everything resides, and it's all energetic, it's systemic, it's all connected, it's holographic. And so when I say quantum, because what I've seen is when I get in the field with somebody's chart, it sometimes it's not just this lifetime, and sometimes it goes into past lives or ancestral, or it may just stay right present. So I never know where it's going to go. So to me, that even feels quantum and multidimensional, that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, that's a great, I think that's, yeah, that's a great explanation. And, well, for a while I've been working with this idea that there's a pure energetic signature to each planet that's beyond the stories or beneath the stories. Kind of like each of us has our own pure energetic signature. I think you call it a note in your work,
Mm,
in your description. And that, yeah, because there's the words and the stories and the programming are, of course, a lot of what we're trying to unlock.
right, right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I feel like there is a specific vibrational frequency, but then it's nuanced for each person based on everything else in their chart.
Mhm. Say
So
more
Saturn,
about that. Yeah, say a little more about that.
well, that Saturn will show up, somewhat the same for each one of us, but it's going to be very nuanced
Right.
and based on everything else and multiple lifetimes and who
Yeah, that
knows.
makes sense to me too, because of course, Saturn in your chart isn't all by itself.
Right.
And it's in a sign in a house and it's interrelated with other planets. And so, yeah, that makes total sense.
And then if we go to the galactic, I mean, the galactic is what's beyond our solar system, and that includes all the fixed stars and their energies and vibrations that are, that we have access to through our chart. And so that plays into it too. It's just like, taking the blinders off, and it just keeps expanding.
Yeah, one of the things you did with us in that, I think it was that last class, as we looked at, or we worked with the chart of, I can't remember if it was the chart of the solstice as one of them, and then we did something else. And I remember being struck by you bringing in the energy, I think, of the galactic center.
Yeah, because the sun is positioned at the galactic center on the solstice.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. So, so tell me, like in your work with clients and your work with people, whether it's through family constellations, like how do these things all work together? What do you like, what kind of things do you notice about them and how they work together?
Um, it, it's almost beyond words. But I'll use one of my favorite clients as an example. She was going through a really big, challenging, well, divorce in her life. And she did not know astrology, and but she was curious about it. And so when I first looked at her chart, Pluto was on her north node in her seventh house, transiting Pluto. And so we started working right there. And anyway, for an entire year, we used her chart and these planets and the transits and what was happening. She would go into the field, the planet would call her, she would go into it, and my job is to sense if there's any tension, and that's where I use the skills of family constellation work, which is ultimately is just acknowledging what is and letting everything know it belongs. And I mean, that's the two primary principles of it. But what ended up happening is her chart coached her through this entire process, and she was feeling it. I mean, it's coming through her body. So it's like an immediate integration because it's not a concept or an idea. She's feeling it as it's coming through. And sometimes, sometimes the planets would say things I would have never thought of, you know. So it was just so uniquely personal for her, and it ended up being a pretty remarkable journey for her. And she knows astrology now, with not with because she studied it, but because she embodied it, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like she lived it in a pretty concentrated time.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found with working with clients is that people, especially planets like Saturn and Mars and the old time malefics, they come in with these preconceived notions. And a lot of people, if I tell them they're in a Saturn transit or a Pluto transit, the immediate reaction is fear. And I'm curious because it sounds like your experience of the planets, as is mine, is very different. And I'm curious what you've noticed about that.
I can say 100% in the 5 years I've been doing it this way, I have not encountered a Saturn or Pluto that was mean.
Yeah.
I mean, because they have voice, and they speak through the client. And there have been things said like, one thing that really stood out is there's no reason for suffering. The suffering comes from resisting what is wanting to come through.
Mm.
And yeah, and that everything it's for our evolution, and it may not be comfortable, but the more we resist, the more painful it's going to be. But yeah, and that's where I go back to that fourth dimension that Barbara Hand Cloud talks about. I feel like so much is in that's been projected onto planets. And I have seen in sessions, especially Saturn, when they step into the energy of it, and this is repeated a few times, it's been interesting that Saturn sounds very paternal and but like a mean dad. And so again, this is a family constellation approach. I'll just have I'll have the client say, "You're Saturn, you're not my dad." And it's like you can almost see this energy like split apart. like there's been an entanglement, and I've had that happen a few times, but I haven't seen it happen with any planet except for Saturn. So
Yeah, well, I don't know how much of my stuff you're familiar with, but I have this theory that Saturn is the depository, or you could call it the scapegoat for our very broken relationship with authority in this culture, right?
yes,
That we outsource our authority to parents and governments and whoever. And until we recognize that and reclaim it, I think that Saturn just kind of holds that energy for people.
that makes perfect sense in what I've seen then. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it gives the client, if they're outsourcing it to Saturn and Saturn's the mean dad, it's like, oh, I can't help it. But you can't stay in victim consciousness when these planets are truly in their, authentic vibration. So that's fascinating. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and I love what you said about like it's like the story gets entangled with the symbol, right? Because that's what symbols do is hold stories. And that your job, at least in part, is to break that whatever you'd call it, entanglement is as good a word as any, I think. And so that people can get access to like that pure sense of their own Saturn, for instance, right?
Right. Right. And that's where this comes back. Like everything I'm bringing in is through what I've learned in Constellation, which is interesting that it's even called family constellation
Mhm.
work. But in family constellations, these entanglements happen a lot where, husband gets entangled with dad, like, and so we use phrases like, you're my husband, not my father, and you see the energies separate. And I started feeling that with Saturn, so that's how it came about, is we do that in our relationships anyway, so it makes sense that we would do it with a planet, especially hearing your take on outsourcing authority. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. That's a great, yeah. I know because what, for instance, one of the things I think about is that, the words associated with Saturn are things like responsibility and commitment and discipline. And those have such a negative, heavy connotation in our culture. But my sense is that that's because it comes from the outside, right? If responsibility comes from out there, then yeah, it's not, I don't want to be responsible because you told me I have to be,
Right.
right? And I don't want to be committed because you told me I have to be. It's and we forget that like disciple, the word disciple or discipline comes from the word disciple.
Mm. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, we'll probably come back to this because there's another whole topic I want to come to, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about the galactic points because there are 4 points that you mention on your website that are kind of the key points in the galaxy. I guess I'm saying that correctly. I'm kind of curious about that aspect of galactic astrology.
Okay. Yeah. So galactic astrology primarily consists of fixed star systems, but what drew my attention to it is my south node is at the galactic center, and the minute I heard that, it just pinged something in me, and I went on this quest to. It was like, what does that mean? It was, yeah, it was really intriguing to me. And so I found Julia Balaz, who runs this galactic astrology school, and she, I'm, I'm really not sure where, if it was her or somebody else that designated these four. There are four black holes that they they operate on a spiral, and like the galactic center is the closest one and the smallest, even though it's like massive. And then there's one called the great attractor, and then the super galactic center, and then the shapley attractor. And anyway, they are these, to me, when I get in the field with them, they feel like portals, but not going out. They feel like energy coming in. And so then each one has, a certain sign and degree. So we can look at your chart and see if you have any planets or points aligned with these cosmic points. And especially there for a while, it seemed like everybody I was magnetizing as clients would have, something significant at one or more of these. And what was happening was when we would get in the field with it, it was if your sun was at, the supergalactic center, you would be in the energy of your sun, and then I would ask, do you sense this super cosmic point there? And the pattern I kept seeing was that all of a sudden people would be like, oh my gosh, yes, there's something there, but it hadn't been like activated, and that these energies are waiting to be invited in. And so that's what we would do, is just like invite the energy in. And I've done some screenshots of Zoom calls of how cosmic it gets on the screen. So much energy coming in, and just like rainbow light. And I'll see people, like, you can just see that like their whole color change, or like little trembles start happening. The energy is coming in. And I have a Virgo stellium. I am very grounded. And so I just stumbled into all of this. And so, I mean, I continued to be like, what in the world? But it's happening. And this energy wants to come in and support us, is what it feels like.
What do your clients experience after that activation? Have you been able to follow some people through time a little bit to see, well, how does it change their life? What does it do?
It's subtle. It doesn't tend to be like massive, sell everything and move to India or something like that.
That's good.
But yeah, it's more like it's helping us clear all this density. It's clearing, it's raising vibration, and just helping us to, again, that, just expanding our perception, I think. But I believe, intuitively, I believe it's helping our light body come online more. It's helping us to, deprogram the programming that's there. But yeah, typically it hasn't been like just, it's been subtle but powerful.
Yeah, I asked that because, well, because I have all my planets in Capricorn, right? So I'm like you, there's a lot of that earth, and it's very grounded, and I'm more of a, until really doing this class. I mean, astrology, I think you can't do it without some sort of intuitive channel as well. But I'm typically a very experiential, 3D experiential person. But I also know that I believe part of what we're all here for right now is to expand our capacity for these other more subtle awarenesses and energies. So that, I mean, even if it's not like there's not immediate obvious effects, I think it's there. It's just that we're just now learning to be tuned into that and that
Right.
subtle level of things.
Yeah. And another thing that I've really noticed is I'll try to be good at taking notes on what somebody says when they first come, because what I've found is with especially these cosmic energies that expand us, my take on it is like we've always had this capacity, but we're so dense and, you know, energetically dense and programmed away from remembering that we have them. And so then when they come online, it just feels so natural
Yeah,
that we don't remember not having them.
yeah.
And so I'll, really try to take notes of what it was like before, and then ask a question. And I used to offer neurofeedback to people, and that would happen there. It's like, oh, this incredible pain. We do a couple of sessions, they come in, I'm like, how's that pain? And they're like, what pain? And it's like when you get to a place of homeostasis, you just kind of forget that. And so I'm seeing that same kind of pattern with as more of our inner technology comes online, we forget what it was like to not have it.
Yeah, that's such a great example, and it's so true because I do energy healing as well, and that experience is maybe it's common to all energy healers because I also have a family member who's a homeopath, and she's warned me when she's done homeopathic, recommendations for me, pay attention because you're not going to know that this is working because you're going to forget how you felt before. And yeah, I don't know that we need to remedy that, but I think it's a good thing to keep in mind for people that you just, yeah, when it feels that natural, you just don't remember what it was like before. I mean, I don't even remember. I was sick last week and I barely remember it because it's gone now.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's a good point. Do we even need to remedy that? But our culture of productivity
And
and
results. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's hard as a healer because if somebody doesn't actually notice that they got healed, it's a little harder to make a living, right?
right. Yeah.
But you said something. I want to go back to something you said about when we were talking about the like your client, the example of the client that was tuning into the I think it was the Galactic Center. And the fact that they put their attention on it and that was the activation. Do I kind of have that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing I've been playing with is this we don't realize how powerful our attention is. And of course, there are gazillions of forces out there trying to get our attention, particularly on the media, in the media, and it's a commodity. It's being commodified now.
Right.
But I think that is such a great example of the power of your attention.
Yes. Yes. And that plays into quantum physics too. I mean, it's the observer effect because once you pay attention to something, then it expands from there. So, yeah. And I also, to me, it feels like these cosmic energies, though, there's something about free will there. It's like there's all this energy, like, here I am available, but you've got to invite me in, is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wonder, so your attention is maybe let me rephrase that a little bit. So it's almost like your attention is a form of invitation, right? So
Yes.
it's another reason to be careful with where your attention goes because you're inviting things in.
Yes.
Um, and there was something else I wanted to say about that, but what was it? Yeah, I can't remember. But that whole thing about attention, I think, is something that, again, we just don't realize the power of it.
And the other thing about that is because these cosmic energies are can be so powerful. I've had some people feel overwhelmed by it. And again, we've got the power and it's like all you have to do is say I need this turned down, titrate it down. And like I mean, the wisdom of the body, we can titrate that, how we receive it down and not just, be at the mercy of cosmic energies. So,
Yeah, and that goes so much to, I'm sure you've seen it in the spiritual world. I know I've seen it in the spiritual world and definitely in the healing world, is this sense that we have no power, right? That we're at the mercy of whether it's the planets or whatever forces are out there, that we have no capacity to moderate that or to choose. And I wonder, maybe you could speak about that for a moment.
well, that's kind of a hot topic for me because I mean, I do believe victim consciousness is one of our biggest issues. I mean, going back to your theory about Saturn, how we outsource. I mean, I think I'm in long term recovery from alcoholism, and I have such appreciation for this 12-step program because it requires taking responsibility. And I think what you're talking about is like, yeah, it's our own laziness, victim consciousness, and yeah, just not taking responsibility because we are incredibly powerful and empowered, but again, it's up to us to initiate that. But I think that's our real pandemic.
Yeah. Well, and don't you think that that's a lot of how we're taught from day one? I mean, even one of the people I worked with, a coach I worked with for a few years, he put it in the analogy of going to school, right? That you're always trying to get a grade. And so you're always meeting somebody else's expectations so that you can get a certain grade. And nobody tells you once you're done with that, that you don't have to do that anymore. And
Yeah,
yeah, you kind of stay stuck in this, I have to make somebody else happy or I have to meet somebody else's standard. And that is, not only do we not have any rites of passage, but I think, there are obvious advantages for some entities to keep us stuck in that place.
yeah. I mean, all of our paradigms and systems are set up on
Mhm.
that framework, and so, but it comes back to us having our own sovereignty to say, no, I don't. Just because the rest of the world does that doesn't mean that I have to abide by it. But I mean, it takes it takes a certain willingness to do that for sure.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I don't know how much you and I have talked about this, but this time that we're in and this transitional time that we're in, that there seems to be a growing consensus, and I'm in that camp, that we're moving away from a time where we're bound by other like outside forces to determine who we are or what role we're playing in the world. And it has to come more from inside and being a coherence, right? We have to become coherent beings, and then I call it living from the inside out.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that's what this big evolutionary time is about. And that's why I get so excited about the astrology. I mean, I got excited about the galactic, but in reality, I've pulled it back to the natal chart because that's our blueprint to be who we're uniquely here to be. And if we're each one living out our chart, then we are in our sovereignty and our inner authority and uniquely ourselves. Right now, the way it's set up, we're very homogenized.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. The other kind of topic that seems to fit here, that one of the things I really wanted to explore was one of the things I noticed during the course that I was on with you and Emily was that you did point us back inside, right? And that one of the purposes of this whole podcast is to help people come back to their own natural wisdom, which to me means knowing who you really are and having a feel for your own vibration, if you will, your own frequency. Because the one thing I've noticed, and I'm curious kind of how this works for you, that seems like when we bring ourselves back into center, that's when we have greater access to everything.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I really don't have words to go beyond that, but I mean, it's just, I feel that is such truth because it's just like this, yeah, an anchoring that expands.
Yeah. An anchoring that expands. That's good. Those are good words. And I think part of the reason that came up for me is that I'd never done any kind of constellation work. And it's fairly, I won't say it's new because I've been at it for well more than a decade now, but well, even longer than that. But this whole idea, I think there's a part of me that still thinks of it as new, to trust my intuitive capacities and to trust my knowing. And yet, like in the work that we were doing in the quantum astrology, that's all you had, right? If I'm playing somebody's moon, unless I get stuck in my head about what the moon is and what the moon in Aquarius means and all that, I don't have any other wisdom to draw on but what comes from that knowing. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's hard for a lot of people to trust that. And maybe you can even talk about your journey. How did you begin to trust that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's it's definitely been a long journey, with being a highly sensitive kid and a highly dysfunctional family, and having that sensitivity, but then having not trusting it, and finally being old enough, like, no, I do know some things here, and then getting trained in all these different energy modalities. That has definitely helped with trusting. But another reason I fell so in love with family constellation work is we're doing the work, standing up, eyes open, and it's it's movement based work when we're doing it in person. And I just started noticing that the more I facilitated that, I'm operating in the field, and when I'm operating there, working there, I have to trust the field. And that actually felt like a huge relief to me. It's like, oh, I don't have to know everything. I can just trust what's coming through. And so the more I would trust it, the more it would come through. And that's what kind of hooked me in. Um, and it's like, to me, it's very much like dream work, like how clever dreams can be, like just mind-blowingly clever. And that's what I've seen with the field. It's like when I get out of my head and into the field and trust that, which is coming through my intuition, it expands beyond anything my little brain could come up with. And so that was my hook. I'm like, oh, I love this stuff. And I've just gotten to where that's how I do all of my work. Is we're going to get out of the head, drop into the heart, and um, play in the field. And I'm I'm really excited about creating some in real life communities where we keep practicing this, because I think that, like, we have our inner technology coming online, but we need places that we can practice it and learn to trust it and speak the same language with people. And am I answering the question?
Yeah, keep going because this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I also love family constellation work, because some of the principles of it just feel like life skills for 5D living, for higher consciousness. And like, one is that everything belongs. And we're just so quick to try, like, illness or pain, like we want to get rid of it, but it's there as a messenger. And so everything belongs. We can learn from it, and things relax when we allow things to belong, acknowledging what is. And that's another thing I see, is we're just constantly trying to avoid what is. And so in family constellation work, you say things that are hard truths, but you can feel the field relax when a hard truth is acknowledged. And so I feel like going forward, when we can quit being so codependent and so people pleasing and all of those kind of things, and just say hard truths from a loving place, um, and allow everybody and everything to belong, instead of all the exiling and divisiveness and separating. I mean, those are the two things about family constellations that I love the most, because I feel like it can bring us back together. Because it seems like so many people want to bring us back together, but we don't really have the framework of how to do it.
Yeah, and that whole thing about acknowledging that everything and everyone, right, belongs is But that's not where we are as a culture at the moment, at least not if you read social media and the media in general. I
Okay.
think on the individual level, more of us are that way than the news would have you believe.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, when you go out in the world, I've really made that kind of a practice and an investigation lately. Like, how many people will really make eye contact with me and be, just noticing the kindness that's out there. There's a lot of kindness.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of that brings me back to thinking about the power of attention, right? If you're paying attention to kindness, you're going to see and get and you're going to see more of it.
Right.
If you're paying attention to the garbage, then that's what you're going to get more of. And it's and in Ayurveda, there's a saying that prana follows focus. And what that means is that your life force follows what you put your focus on. So it's not just what you're getting more of, it's also what you're giving life force to.
True. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that alone, if we just all started looking for the kindness in the world, that could make a difference.
Boy, wouldn't it? Yeah. And I think I loved also what you said about with this inner technology coming more online, that we need places and situations and circumstances where we can practice. And if somebody doesn't have a group to practice that, what are there specific things that you've kind of dialed in for yourself that help you build these capacities?
Well, I mean, I think being in long-term recovery is, I mean, it's a program that practices radical honesty. And I've been in and out of AA throughout the years, but it's some of those kind of things that I've really hung on to. And for me, attaching it to my sobriety, which is life and death for me, I was doing that far before family constellations came along, but being so sensitive, I noticed what it feels like to just be honest instead of people pleasing or white lies and that kind of thing. It just feels clean. And so I think I said we don't have framework, but I do believe there are some frameworks out there that, find something that works and start living by it. And here lately, I've just been feeling like, especially those of us in the spiritual community, that for me personally, I feel like I've been lofty, even though I'm very grounded Virgo, that all this practice has been meditation and all that kind of stuff. And now it's just like, just live it.
Yeah.
Live a good, honest, grounded life. And, maybe these practices have been just that. Okay, I've been practicing, so now I can live it and be it. Um, but I'm just finding I'm not drawn to the same things I used to be. It's like just live it now.
Yeah, I definitely feel the truth of that. That especially in the spiritual community, it can be, well, I mean, they have a term for it, right? They call it spiritual materialism,
Yeah.
which is, I do the practices and I'm really great at them, but that has nothing to do with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, before we, well, a couple of things. One is I wanted to know, is there any topic that we haven't covered that sort of at top of mind that you'd love to kind of dive into before we kind of wrap up?
Um, no, I mean, the reason I just love listening to your podcast and you and Emily talking is, I mean, natural wisdom, two such simple but profound words. And it just feels so critical that we come back to that. And it resides in every one of us,
Yeah.
and there's just different doorways to get to it, whether it's astrology or recovery or Ayurveda or,
Or walking in the woods.
yeah.
Yeah. Or in the desert, which is where I am now. Yeah. 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 I mean, we are part of it all, right? I mean, and that I think all of these things that you've been talking about, the quantum astrology, the galactic astrology, the family constellations, it's one of the threads to me that's really obvious is that it just shows you that whether you know it or not, you're part of all of that and you have access to all of it.
Right. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
okay, sorry, go ahead. Were you
No, I did. I just said absolutely.
Do you have, so I know you have a couple of programs there. I'm going to put in the show notes the link to your website, and I know that you and Emily have an offering coming up. I thought maybe you'd want to chat about that and then anything else that you've got and ways that people can connect with you and work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So Emily and I are doing another where we take people into the field with their chart, but this time it's going to be specifically for people in their Saturn return being either Pisces or Saturn in Pisces or Aries, because we have, this shifting from Pisces to Aries in February is so potent and powerful. So I mean, it's just exciting to see how Saturn is showing up in different people's charts, but it will be, very personalized for each participant, where they'll get a constellation, but there's also going to be writing prompts. And ultimately, this getting in the field with your Saturn is going to open up, it's just going to open it up where you've got access, much more access to really be communicating with Saturn through whether it's wrapping up your first or second or entering your first or second Saturn return. And the fun thing is, I'm Saturn in Pisces, so wrapping it up, and Emily is Saturn in Aries, about to start hers. So,
One is a Saturn lover. I think it's amazing and wonderful that you're going to give people a taste of the real Saturn, like the true Saturn, right? Not the
right,
Saturn that's full of not the 4D Saturn, as you would put it.
right, yeah. And I got in the field with Saturn when I was about to start my Saturn return. And so I was representing Saturn. And I mean, it almost brought me to my knees because, and the person facilitating for me was like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "This is what a truly loving father feels like." And it was just, so I've never had any problem with Saturn. I'm like, yes, please, guide me. um, yeah, it was, and it just kind of swooped in, and it was a powerful feeling. So
That's very cool. Yeah, that's very cool. What about any other offerings and things that you've got coming up?
yes, I collaborate with another woman, Kim Sales, who is very cosmic, and she's a creative being. She's an artist, but um, we like to keep it in the framework of creativity, not artistic expression. But anyway, she and I have this ongoing, perpetual 12-month program of, it's a an asteroid goddess per month that we get in the field. We find out, you get a chart with all 12 asteroid goddesses in your natal chart, and then we get in the field, and these feminine cosmic energies inform. And so we meet twice a month, and one time is getting in the field, and the other time is doing creative work, painting around these energies. So at the end of it, it's a long um, I forget what it's called when it's not on, the canvas isn't on wood, it's just rolled up. But anyway, you end up at the end with these 12 asteroid goddess, it's a scroll on canvas. And so anyway, that's been super fun. And it's perpetual, but people can enter it only at the solstice or equinox. So it's 4 times a year that you can enter the process. And so that'll be coming up with the winter solstice.
Wow, that sounds really fun.
It is fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. That'd be a great way to learn the goddesses.
Yeah. And we have some unique asteroid goddesses in there, though, like Arachne, um, who is like Spider Woman kind of. Anyway, the 12 very unique ones came through when when we got called to do this. There's some more traditional, but Medusa is one. There's some dark goddess energy, which I love because I think that's reclaiming, really reclaiming that ability to just, cut through and be who we're here to be. So
Yeah, I think that's probably another great example of 4D versus 5D, the programming versus the like the true signature. Because there's the whole dark energy in 4D has been so distorted and twisted too.
yeah, true.
Yeah. Oh, those are exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. And we'll get the links in the show notes so people know how to get access to those. And plus they'll know how to reach you at your website. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you. And before we wrap, I do want to say those of you that have been listening for a while know that I'm offering a retreat over the solstice. And it starts 2 weeks from tomorrow, which is a little mind-boggling, at a hot spring south of Santa Fe, and there are still some spots left. And if you feel this one, the people that have signed up so far, it's been really clear that just as for me, it was a calling to create it, they're being called to come. And so that, for this solstice retreat, I'll put the link in and you can go read about it. But then I would say tune in because you're going to know if it's the right thing for you. Um, and it's not necessarily going to be a head decision, it's going to be a heart decision. So, which I think is probably true for all of these things, right? But I just know that one has been that's how what I'm hearing from the participants and what it is for me as well.
Well, and this solstice just feels like it's going to be extra potent.
Yeah, it is. I just wrote something about it this morning. I mean, for one thing, we're in this big transitional time between this period of endings, which we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and then this new beginning energy that's coming up next year. But then Mars and Venus are both in the underworld. Venus is also at the galactic center with the sun at the solstice. Mars is close. And
Wow.
then Mercury will be on the edge of visibility. The moon will be on the edge of visibility. So all the personal planets are essentially either in the twilight or invisible. And so it's really a great time to be going in and and kind of reclaiming that within place.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it's fun time. Well, thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation. I love talking about this stuff. I love the class that we did, and I would encourage anybody who's in their Saturn return to get into this course. I assume you've got a limit on how many
Yeah.
people.
I think 12 is the limit. Yeah.
Okay, and the link will be in the notes. And so I would say if you're interested, sign up right away.
Yeah.
Don't wait till the last minute, which is kind of our way of doing things usually.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Good. I'm glad. It was great to have you. And I will, yeah, thank you all for joining us and listening and watch for more because I'm sure we'll be doing more of these kinds of conversations too.